What's up, guys? I got a really fun one for you today. We're going to be recreating this really trippy psychedelic tunnel. As you can see, there's a lot of really interesting kaleidoscopic patterns in there, and the techniques I'm going to show you are quite interesting as well. I think you're going to learn a lot from this tutorial. On a side note, if you do make a variation of this render, feel free to tag me on Instagram because I'd love to see what you guys are doing with the tutorials I'm putting out. And I'm going to leave my handle just down there. So yeah, on with the tutorial.
Right, so once you've got Blender open, we're going to hit A, X, and just delete everything, so we start with a fresh scene. Now hit Shift A, add a mesh, and we're going to add a UV sphere. Now come into edit mode, so hit Tab. We're just going to delete some of these faces so we can travel through the sphere when we make it a tunnel. So I want you to come up here and select X-ray mode. This allows us to see through the object and select the vertices behind it, as well as the ones in front. Next thing, I want you to select face mode and just click out of it. Hit the tilde key and we're going to hit 8, so you go into top view. Now hit C on your keyboard so you get a ring around your cursor. We're just going to select all these faces in the middle. And once you've done that, once you have an orange circle, same size as this, hit escape, hit X, we're going to hit dissolve faces, and then we're going to hit X again and delete faces. And now you have a hole in your sphere. Great, so while you're still in edit mode, hit A, come to edge, and select edge split. And we're going to come out of X-frame mode as well. Come out of edit mode, so hit Tab again. Select your modifiers, so this little spanner here. We're going to add a new modifier and we're going to add a smooth modifier. And we can create some really interesting patterns in a bit, but we're going to leave it where it was. So just leave it at 0.5 for now. Now we're going to add a new modifier. We're going to add a subsurface modifier and we're going to change the render to 1. And just make sure your subsurface modifier is at the top as well. So just click on this little arrow here and make sure this one is on the top. Now we're going to add another modifier and we're going to add a wireframe modifier. Now we're going to drop the thickness down to about 0.002. Now you get some really interesting patterns when you start playing around with the FAC. Now I'm just going to scale this up to 8, so hit S, then 8. So you get a nice big sphere, and I'm going to add a camera now. So hit Shift A, add a camera, and we're going to hit Alt R to reset the rotation so it's facing down. Now we're going to hit G, Z, 8. So that's where our sphere would have peaked if we hadn't deleted the faces. Now I'm going to make an instance of this. So if you hit M on your keyboard, that's going to create a new collection. So create a new collection, name it whatever you want. We'll say sphere tunnel. Now hit Shift A, add collection instance, and add your spheres. Now we're going to hit G, Z, minus 16. So just hit Shift D, Z, minus 16. And just repeat that process until you have about 7 of them. And the reason why we're doing instance is because it saves a bit of work on our computer, because it's not actual mesh data, it's more like a copy of it. And also, anything you do to this original sphere, it's going to affect all the instances. For example, when we start animating the factor of this smooth parameter, it's going to affect the whole tunnel now, and you can get some really cool sort of patterns with it. It's really awesome, man. So to make it loop, we're basically going to animate the camera going down the Z-axis like that. Now it's going to come to this point, and then it's going to just drop straight back to there, which is going to make it have a seamless loop. So the way you do that is select your camera. So we're going to just bring the timeline up quickly. I'm going to change this endpoint to 120. Now make sure you're on your first frame. We're going to apply a keyframe on the Z-axis. We're going to come to frame 121, drop the Z-axis down to -8, and apply a keyframe there. And you're going to see it does that. But you'll notice it the camera sort of slows down as it comes to an end. this is because the interpolation is set to Bezier, and you want that set to linear instead for a smoother loop. So if you hit A, T, linear, and that should flatten out your animation. Now we're going to jump into camera mode to see what that looks like. So just hit 0 on your keyboard. Cool. And I'm just going to Shift D on this instance, and I'm going to hit Z32, just so I've got one on top, just in case I get some things poking out when I start playing around with the smooth factor, just to make sure it definitely loops seamlessly. Cool. So we're going to hit play, and you should get a loop now. Great. Now I'm going to start animating the smooth modifier. Remember, I was doing all these sort of crazy things. So I think here's what I'm going to do. On the first frame, I'm going to keep it at 0.5, so hit I on the keyboard, Shift D, duplicate that keyframe and bring it to 121 so that we know it's going to loop seamlessly. On frame 61, we're going to bring the factor down to about here, I think, and hit I on the keyboard, and just make sure that's set to Bezier rather than linear. You want the animation to sort of bounce. So we're going to hit play, and we're going to see what that looks like. Yeah, that's really cool. Right, now we're going to start shading it. Hit Z, then 8. It's going to take you into rendered mode. You're not going to be able to see it much because we deleted the light. We're going to be essentially using emission to light up the scene on the wireframes. So we're going to make the world black. So bring that down. Just make sure your overlays are on because you're not going to be able to see anything otherwise. Click on your sphere here, and we're going to go to our material settings, and we're going to add a new material. Change the surface to an emission shader, and now you're going to be able to see the scene. We're going to take the overlays off now, so come back here, and look at that. We're going to pump the strength up to 8. Now just come to the top corner here, so we can drag in a new window. Come to this little drop down menu here on editor type. We're going to change that to shader editor. Now this is a node-based editor, so what you see on this screen is exactly what you see here, except for it just allows you to go into more detail. So we're going to use this to do some interesting things with the shading. So I'm going to hit Shift A, add a converter, and we're going to add a color ramp. Plug the color into the color of the emission shader, and you see these two sliders. It sort of slides in between black and white, but we're going to use a noise texture to assign the colors to a weird pattern. So Shift A, add a texture, add a noise texture, plug the color into the FAC, and we're going to make this, we're going to bring the black in there, and we're going to bring the white in about here. So click on this this fader here, and click on the white bit here. We're going to change that to a more sort of purple, pink sort of color. Click on the black, and we're going to make that a bit, we're going to bring the white all the way up, and we're going to make that more of a, say, a nice light blue. And you can play around with your noise texture settings. So I'm going to bring the detail down, and the scale I'm going to drop to about, scale I'm going to put at about 3.2. Now hit play, and you get some really interesting sort of kaleidoscopic patterns. Now one more thing I'm going to do, I'm going to widen the camera up a bit. So if you click on your camera, you can change your focal length if you want. So I'm just going to get rid of this shading editor now. So just click on the same corner that you expanded with, and just drag that in, and that will get rid of that window. Now on your camera settings, I just want the focal length to be a bit wider. So I'm going to hit 25, 26. I'm going to make some reflections for this tunnel. So click on your sphere, hit Shift D, I'm going to duplicate that, and we're going to call this one Sphere Reflect. And we're going to delete all these modifiers now. So just delete all these on your reflection one. Obviously that's changed everything, and that's because we have the emission material assigned to this. So we're just going to add a new material. We're going to add principled BSDF, well that's the default one. So on your Sphere Reflect, come into edit mode, hit A, and we're going to hit assign on this material too. Hit assign. That's going to change the material for that one. Now we're going to just scale it up a bit. So hit S, Control, and just bring it up a touch. So if you come into render mode, if you come out of render mode, you'll see what we have. We have a sort of sphere tunnel now. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to come back into render mode, and on our sphere reflect, we're going to pump the metallic up, and we're going to drop the roughness all the way down. We're going to come to the render properties. We're using Evee, by the way, for this. We're going to add ambient inclusion, a little bit of bloom, screen space reflections, that's the important one, and motion blur. And you're going to see we're getting these reflections now on our tunnel. On the bloom, just expand that and just drop the intensity down because we don't need it that strong. And finally, we're going to come back to the scene settings. And then we're going to scroll down. We're going to change the color management. We're going to pop the color management. We're going to change the look to very high contrast. And we're going to drop the gamma down to about 0.8. Back to your sphere reflect. We're just going to change the base color. We're going to drop that down to a bit more gray, just so the reflections aren't as strong. You can have more reflection. If you pump up to white, the reflections will be a bit more strong, but if you want to dampen it, you can bring it down. I think I'm going to leave it high actually. Great stuff. Now it's time to render the animation, so that's pretty much it. So what you want to do is come to your output settings, change this output somewhere you can find it. You don't want to save it in the TMP folder. File format, FFmpeg video, encoding, we'll put that as MP4, video codec leave as H.264, and we're going to put that as perceptually lossless. Then just come to render and render animation, and you're done. Right, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thank you for watching. And if you did watch to the end, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me grow the channel. Also, tag me in your render if you made a variation of this. I'd love to see what you guys are doing with the tutorials I'm putting out. I'll be leaving a link to the project file if you want to have a play around with that too. You can find that on my website. That's lenmotion.co.uk.